I'm joined now by Ashley All. She's the spokesperson for Kansans for Constitutional Freedom, the group campaigning for no votes. So let me start with, we're all aware of the hurdles that were presented with this, the odd wording, early August. So I want to start with the fact that there were no college campuses for you to organize around. How did you communicate to the under 30 crowd? Because clearly those numbers, we don't have an exit poll, some analysis will come in later, but clearly a younger voter did show up.
Yeah, first, thanks for having me. You know, you're right. There has been significant obstacles put in our way since this passed onto the ballot in 2021. The wording was complicated. It was on a primary ballot, which tends to have roughly half as many people show up than the general election. And so we had all these obstacles in our way, and we really got to work over a year ago to build a coalition, a broad and diverse coalition of organizations and stakeholders to fight this amendment. And we brought many Kansans, as you mentioned, from young voters all the way to older voters across the political spectrum together to really engage on this complicated issue. And we were successul, and we are overwhelmed and really inspired by the victory last night.
Look, let me ask you point blank. I'm sure you guys had enough resources. I'm sure you measured public opinion in Kansas. Did you foresee a double-digit win at all?
No. Yeah, I mean, we always thought that it was possible to pull this off. Kansas is a unique state. It's got some independent and kind of pragmatic veins in it. It has some really great free state history. So it absolutely was a possible win. But even folks like me who've been working in Kansas politics for 18 years were a little bit surprised by the margin.
You know, there's a part of me that looks at this and say, boy, Kansas has been going through what I would call an overreach correction now for almost a decade, right? Which is Republicans may have misread their success in the first decade of this century there, and obviously voters pulled back to the point of a moderate wing of the Republican Party essentially became the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. Since you're a veteran of Kansas politics, how much of this do you see as almost a through line with the Brownback overreach, and how much of this was sort of separate in your mind?
I think this was a really unique situation. I mean, there are obviously some really interesting dynamics going back many, many years in our state. But what I learned, this was my first issue campaign, so it was an experience and a very good learning experience, something that was very personal for me. But what I found and what we learned was that abortion is not a partisan issue. And we approached it as a nonpartisan issue. And so we really did focus on engaging with voters across the political spectrum, progressives, moderates, conservatives, libertarians, and having a conversation about this issue that is a little bit nuanced and willing to accept people that are in the middle. And that was really critical here. This issue is really important to a broad group of people for a lot of different reasons. And we really worked to engage them and mobilize them in the last couple of months.
Look, I keep hearing, and the language you used was what I would argue wasn't sort of partisan political rhetoric. It was sort of a different type of more patriotic political rhetoric, freedom and things like that. Give some advice. There's going to be a lot of Democratic campaigns that are going to look at what happened in Kansas and go, hey, I want to do what they did. And then you just said, well, you got to be nonpartisan in your rhetoric. Can you do both and still be a partisan candidate on the ballot and incredibly talk about the abortion issue as a nonpartisan issue?
I think you can. I think you have to be willing to have conversations with people who are different than you. You have to be willing to have a nuanced conversation, and also to really look at what's at stake. And what's at stake for us here were constitutional rights. And so we focused very clearly on protecting constitutional rights and freedom for women to make decisions about their health care and their lives free from government interference. The vast majority of Kansans, I would argue the vast majority of Americans, would agree with that. How
much did you benefit from the fact that the other side tried so hard to to say this wasn't about whether there's going to be an abortion ban or not. I mean, it felt like, in hindsight, that they might not have gotten trounced as badly had they been more honest about what the attempt was.
I think I agree with you, actually. I was thinking about that last night. I think that they really did mislead Kansans across the board, whether it was on what the state of the current abortion laws are in Kansas, or whether it was, their interest in pushing an extreme ban. They were disingenuous, and the Kansas voters saw through it.
Yeah, they sniffed it out. I mean, that's something you hear a politician left or right. If it looks like you're hiding something, voters can sniff that out better than you really think. Ashley All, it has to be gratifying to work so hard on something that looked like an uphill battle. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.